So, I think we can all agree that sketchbook content is the most popular content on this small indie side of art YouTube, right? I mean, whether you are touring them, making tutorials, or maybe just making draw with me videos, they all do pretty well. People just like to see sketchbooks. It is a small way to peek into an artist's mind, to see what they're working on, notes about their life. It's a very personal. And since I make this type of content, I also watch a lot of. And something I have noticed while watching those types of videos is that a lot of people don't know how to pick sketchbooks for what they want to do with them. I've seen people pick the flimsiest sketchbooks to do very heavy watercolors, and then they whine about how their pages are all falling out and they have no idea why. Or how people sometimes blow $30 on a sketchbook and then they don't use it for the heavy mediums that the sketchbook is made for and they feel like they overpaid for it. I haven't really seen anyone explain properly how to pick a good sketchbook for the type of art that you want to make, so you know what they say, be the change that you want to see in the world. Hello everyone, this is Maggie, and welcome to another YouTube video. This video idea has been on my mind for a few months now. Again, like I said, I have been watching a lot of sketchbook content, mostly tours and draw with me videos. And something that I noticed a lot of, especially younger artists, doing is the mistake of not knowing what sketchbook to pick when it comes to the type of art that they make. Again, since making chunky sketchbooks has become a bit of a trend amongst like the small indie side of the art community, I've seen a lot of people complain and whine about how their sketchbook falls apart, and when I go to see what their sketchbook looks like, I can see from a mile away that the type of sketchbook that they picked was just not made to handle what they want to do with it. So, you know, since I haven't been, again, really seeing anyone talk about this, I'm going to do it myself. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing that you want to think about when it comes to picking a sketchbook be perfect for you is what type of art are you going to want to do with this sketchbook. This is how we're going to kind of categorize every other factor that we are going to learn about in this video. Do you want to use your sketchbook to only do very fast studies? Maybe you're only going to use dry mediums like charcoal and graphite pencils. Do you want to do finished rendered pieces with something a little heavier like markers or color pencils? Or do you want to be insane and you want to do a sketchbook that has a bunch of collages and mixed media pieces? First thing that you are going to want to do is narrow down what exactly are you planning on doing with your sketchbook. Only then we can move on to the next step. Another thing to have in consideration is where are you taking the sketchbook? I know this may sound a little weird, but stick with me. Some people only keep their sketchbooks at home, whether they can't bring it to their work or their school, or they just draw on it when they are at home surrounded by all their art materials and intend to do finished illustrations. Or maybe you are intending to take your sketchbook everywhere you go, whether you're traveling, again going to work or to school, and you just want to pull it out instead of pulling out your phone and doom scrolling for like half an hour. This is also a very important thing to have in consideration since it will affect a lot of things about your sketchbook, like what size you would rather go for and small add-ons that your sketchbook can have. So with these two factors in mind, we can finally start talking about what are personally the 4 most important factors about picking a sketchbook, which are grams by square meter, page binding, sketchbook size, and add-ons. I'm going to explain all of these, so don't worry. First things first, we're going to talk about grams per square meter. This is practically the little number you see on the cover of sketchbooks indicating how thick your paper is. The higher the number, the thicker the pages are. Again, since I am in Europe, our pages come labeled as grams per square meter. I'm not sure how it is in other places around the world, but I'm sure you may have pounds per square meter, maybe by inch, but the idea is practically the same. I'm going to use grams per square meter since it is a bit of a standard, but the same rules that I'm going to say here will apply to almost everything else you buy. So if you are intending on only doing fast studies, things mostly with graphite pencils or charcoal, maybe lighter mediums that don't require a lot of the paper, you maybe want to go for lighter pages since they won't need to be so thick to be able to take on wet mediums like watercolors or paints. For this, you may want to go for 80 to 100 grams per square meter. If you want to do something like mixed media, which is a lot of what I personally do, you will want to find something somewhere in the middle. You want the pages to still be pretty decent, but not thick to the point of it feeling like a canvas. You want some malleability in that. So for that, you will probably be aiming for somewhere between 120 to 180 grams per square meter. And if you really want to just go ham with watercolors and you need your sketchbook to hold everything together, then you are absolutely going to need some of the higher grams per square meter, which are like 200 to 300 grams per square. This is the usual consistency that you see with watercolor paper, where it's super thick and textured, exactly so it can absorb the water very well without bending. Now we move on to page binding. This is something a lot of people don't seem to really think about, which I find insane. This is the reason why a lot of your chunky sketchbooks are falling apart. So page binding is referring to how the sketchbook pages are held together inside the book. There are a multitude of ways that you can describe how a sketchbook is held together, but I like to split it into 3 categories. First, you have stitched. This means that the pages are held together inside the sketchbook by needle and thread. Sometimes, if the sketchbook is smaller, they can be stapled together. This is the best, strongest binding for your sketchbook that you can probably get, as the pages are physically stuck together by something else besides just glue or the paper themselves. This is the best option to look for if you want to do multimedia and heavy mediums in your sketchbook, like the chunky sketchbooks, the watercolors, the collaging. Your best bet is to get a sketchbook that is either stapled together or stitched together. Next up, we move to glue bound. These are pages that are held together by, you can guess, glue. These are best for light mediums like pencils and pens, and if you want to remove pages from your sketchbook. I've seen a lot of people do this, especially when making maybe traditional commissions where someone asks for something, you draw it on your sketchbook, and then you take out the page to give to them. If you are intending to do something like that, or you just intend to take the pages out of your sketchbook for one reason or another, you want to sell them, you want to put them up on your wall as decoration, the best way to go about seamlessly taking the pages off of your sketchbook is if you get a glue-bound sketchbook. One of the major setbacks of glue-bound sketchbooks is that they do not do well when it comes to watery mediums like watercolors or paints, and they are also much weaker than stitched-bound sketchbooks. So when I see a lot of people trying to make giant chunky sketchbooks with glue-bound sketchbooks, the pages tend to fall off all the time and the sketchbook breaks apart and it's a mess. The third option is getting spiral-bound sketchbooks. You know what a spiral-bound sketchbook is, you have seen them everywhere. A lot of people use them especially for their chunky sketchbooks because they believe that those are held together much better since it is like a giant spiral wire connecting all the pages together, but it tends to somewhat be the other way around since all the spirals are doing a lot of pressure on the sketchbook pages and they tend to rip off more easily. Something good about this type of sketchbook binding, however, is that since, again, there's a lot of spirals and wire connecting each and every page to the cover, they are very easy to maneuver. You can flip them inside out, you can tear out pages, you can even hang off things off the spirals. A lot of people like to decorate their sketchbooks like that. Spiral sketchbooks are a bit of an in-between ground where they do hold up fairly well and they're very easy to bend and fold, but they are still pretty weak. Next up, we are going to talk about sketchbook size. This is important depending on what you are planning on doing with your sketchbook and where you are planning to take it. Obviously, smaller sizes are good for traveling, for making studies and notes, just quick on-the-go things if you're going to the grocery store and you're making a list, if you are on the bus back home or to your job and you just want to pull it out quickly and draw something you see outside. It's much easier to pull out a smaller A5 sketchbook than to pull out just a giant book from your backpack. It's also a lot better because they are just not as heavy and they take up less space in your bag. The downside of smaller sketchbooks is that sometimes they can be a little tricky to work on if you are, again, working with mixed media. A lot of wet mediums like watercolors do need a lot of space on the page so that they can work properly, so that the colors can blend and spread around the page. And sometimes if your sketchbook is really small, you can find some issues with it, but I've seen people get around it fairly easy, so Again, just have that in consideration. On the other hand, bigger sizes are good for maybe staying at home, for making bigger finished pieces. You have plenty of space to work on to make giant paintings and illustrations. It is, again, much better for wet mediums that require a lot of space, again, like watercolors, paints, etc. Obviously, the downside is that they're probably going to be a little harder to walk around with and fitting in your bags. Next up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite things in sketchbooks, which are add-ons. And what exactly do I mean by add-ons? By add-ons, I mean all the little extras that come with a sketchbook. That means how they close, if they have pockets, if they have little bookmarks. These are pretty good and important pieces in the sketchbook, especially if you want to take them around, since a lot of these do tend to help with closing the sketchbook and keeping everything that is inside from falling outside of the sketchbook. So first we're going to talk about sketchbook closures. Again, this is something to keep your sketchbook closed while you are not working on it. Most common ones that I have seen are the elastic bands that you can just snap over the sketchbook to keep it closed. But I've seen other ways people have figured out how to close their sketchbooks. One I really enjoy seeing is having some kind of ribbon that you can tie around the sketchbook in like a little pretty bow or a knot. I've never tried it myself, but I find it fascinating. It looks super. Other people even use little straps with maybe buttons or buckles if you want to be really extra about it. Next up, we're going to talk about pockets. Little pockets at the beginning or the end of your sketchbook so you can store in small flat things like stickers, stray doodles, sticky notes, etc. This is especially good if you take your sketchbook around and, for example, you go have dinner with your family or your friends and maybe you want to save the card of the restaurant that you went to. You want to save the receipt, or you want to save a little piece of paper you found on the floor that you found interesting. It's something more important if you want to take your sketchbook around and you find a lot of stray things that you want to later use on it. Last but not least, bookmarks. Most sketchbooks come with these since it's just a book thing in general. By this I mean it's usually a strand of ribbon that you can use to mark a specific page on your sketchbook. I use mine a lot. They are very handy so you don't have to look around for what page you were on when you last worked on your sketchbook. It's not super important, but you know, it's a little detail. So now that we have all of these factors together, I'm going to show you how to apply them to some sketchbooks that I have personally already used. So first things first, we're going to start with a simple one. Maybe one you've already used yourself. A Canson XL watercolor. I still have one of these sketchbooks. I mainly use it for small illustrations whenever I'm working on watercolors. So we're going to look at it and we're going to try to apply every single thing that we have learned so far. First, what is the size of this sketchbook? This sketchbook is an A5 sketchbook, which means it is around 5.8 inches by 8.3 inches. That's for the Americans. For the Europeans, it's 14.8 centimeters by 21 centimeters. As you can see, it's a small sketchbook that can maybe fit in your bag and you can walk around with. As for grams per square meter, this is 300 grams, which is pretty normal for watercolor sketchbooks. They do need very thick pages so that they can absorb a lot of the water from the watercolors without bending or deforming. How is this sketchbook bound? This sketchbook has a spiral bound, which means a lot of these pages are probably made to be able to be ripped off and cleaned up, be put on a wall. Does this sketchbook have any add-ons? No, not really. It doesn't have a bookmark, it doesn't have a closure, or any pockets in the back. This is something maybe best set to work at home, which absolutely valid. I have never taken the sketchbook outside exactly because it's not the best to take out outside. Plus, whenever I personally work on watercolors, I usually do it at home. Next up, we're gonna move to another sketchbook, the RTX sketchbook. I was gifted this one by RTX last year, and I have had a blast with it, and let's see how it holds up. First, the size of this sketchbook. This sketchbook is a little bigger than an A5. It is 21 centimeters by 15 centimeters. It is much wider than what I'm used to working with, which at the time, really good. Grams per square meter is 180 grams. This is a pretty solid mixed media sketchbook. It can handle everything from charcoal to graphite to pens, watercolors, so on and so forth. Though if you do add too much water to your watercolors, you will start to feel some bending and wrinkling on the page. It's an all-around good sketchbook as long as you don't really go into it. What type of bounding is this sketchbook? This sketchbook is glue bound. This was advertised on their website as a sketchbook that you can very easily peel the pages out of and do whatever you want. Since I usually do very chunky sketchbooks, this was something that I absolutely feared at the time, because as expected, some pages did detach from the sketchbook. It wasn't anything too dangerous, thankfully. By the way I do collaging, everything held up pretty decently, but it was something that I was very scared about while I was working on it with, so there's that. And as for add-ons, this sketchbook has a little front pocket that you can store in a bunch of stuff like stickers, receipts, little clothing tags that I use a lot. It does not have any type of closure or bookmarks. Obviously, if you look at mine, it does have, because I later on added it myself. Now we're moving on to my sketchbook of choice for years now, the Talens Art Creation A5 sketchbook. Like the watercolor one, this is an A5 sketchbook. It's around 13 centimeters by 21 centimeters. It has 140 grams per square meter. It is stitch bound, which means it can hold up very well even when a lot of things are stuck in the pages. And it has plenty of add-ons, like an elastic closure and a bookmark. So now that you know how to apply all of these to actual sketchbooks, you can now go on and whenever you are at the art store, you can find perfect sketchbook for yourself. However, I will leave you with some extra notes. The perfect sketchbook does not exist. You should be very ready to have your priorities straight and compromise. If you find yourself torn between a sketchbook with thicker pages but another one with thinner pages with pockets, you have to be prepared to see what is more important for your art and what you prioritize, and be ready to make a decision. That being said, don't get too attached to a sketchbook you use. Feel free to try out different formats to expand your art. That is something I am currently going through. As much as I like the sketchbook that I am using right now, I do feel very restrained right now. I've been drawing on this format for years, and with the experience that I had with the RTX sketchbook, I find myself wanting wider pages. So whenever I will buy my next sketchbook, that will absolutely be something that I will be more careful of. Next up, be resourceful. Things like bookmarks, elastic closures, and pockets are very easy to make at home if you do not wish to sacrifice them. Again, like I mentioned in my previous point, if your priorities are on having sketchbooks with a lot of add-ons like closures and pockets to put in your stuff, be aware that that should not be the selling point of a sketchbook, since those things are extremely easy to make. I've actually been working on a video where I teach you to do exactly that. Please, let's hope it comes out soon. But I believe that is pretty much it. This was a video that I've been wanting to make for a very long time, since I am personally very picky about what kind of sketchbooks that I use, especially the grams per square meter thing. I do like a very good mixed media sketchbook. I will not use anything under 120 grams per square meter because I know that I will absolutely destroy those pages by the amount of mixed media things that I do. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah, YouTube words. If you would like to see some of my art on this sketchbook, on any other sketchbooks really, these are the social medias where I'm most active on right now. But if you really want, I will leave my card in the description so you can see every social media that I have under the sun. I didn't really talk about OCs or any projects here, but hey, website plug. I have a website where I store all my OCs, all my stories. I do talk a little bit about my sketchbooks in there, so if you fancy learning a little more about that, link in the description. And if you would like to see sneak peeks at upcoming videos, projects that I'm working on, if you want to be notified of the next time that I barge into an art store and meticulously read sketchbook labels, you can join the Discord server. We stream twice a week, every Friday and Saturday. We draw on stream, we play games, we watch movies. Sometimes I talk to people exactly about this type of stuff, like how I've been wanting to really try out a new brand and model of sketchbook. So yeah, if you fancy that, you are very much welcome to join us. Link in the description. And that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!